From the creators who brought you RuPaul's Drag Race and $1 Million Listing, this is World of Wonder's Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of the Wow Report, where we count down the top 10 things of the week that make us go
wow.
I'm Fenton Bailey, co-founder of World of Wonder, joined by our Chief Creative Officer, Tom Campbell.
Hello everyone, hello.
And of course, host of our podcast network, Night Fever, James St. James, literary genius. I'm very well, thank you. Says here.
Could you be any more excited?
The show was going so well up until that point.
I know. Can we just pump a little bit of enthusiasm into this, Fenton? Please, I beg of you.
You got 30 immaculate seconds and you're already complaining.
Oh, God, here we go again.
2024 is zipping along, and we're already on our first episode of March. Goodbye, February. Let's get started with the countdown. Number 10, Tom.
Number 10.
In case you've been living under a rock, it's award season. And for some reason, it feels like award season on steroids because, I don't know, there was things that had to catch up, but there was a lot of award shows this weekend and a lot of kind of memorable moments. Again, I'm far away. I'm actually speaking to you from tomorrow in New Zealand. We're a day ahead. But I wanted to get you guys to weigh in too. But some of my favorite moments that have popped up on the internet is my favorite. I'll start with my favorite is Nick Offerman at the Spirit Awards, accepting for that amazing, sends chills up my spine as I start to talk about it, episode where of The Last of Us, where he and Murray Bartlett played, these against all odds, a survivalist meets, in this post-apocalyptic world. They find each other. Nick Offerman plays a man who it just couldn't be more set up and beautiful, but who's like a survivalist who's alone, who's built fences around his house and traps and booms to kill the zombies and all that kind of stuff. And against all odds, he finds someone to fall in love with. And that person happens to be another man. And it's winning all these awards. And we talked about it when it happened. It was about a year ago. It was incredible because it's based on a video game. And there's all this hate and backlash. And so in his acceptance speech, which was very brief but very funny, he said, and for all the people that had trouble with that, it's not a gay story. It's not a gay love story. It's a love story. And I don't know. I'm not doing it justice.
Right. No, and he also said and the reason because wasn't when people asking him, why did it have to be a gay love story? Why did it have to be gay? And he's like, because of assholes like you asking questions like that. Because it's a love story.
Thank you for saving me from that one. Yes.
Didn't he fall into his trap? Wasn't that how he found him? He
came upon his property and was kind of down there and he took mercy on him for just a minute. It was this glint. It was so beautiful. So beautiful.
Okay, we're drifting away from the premise here of award shows because Tom, this isn't about The Last of Us. This is about award shows.
I
wanted to know how you felt about Barbra Streisand. I would imagine you were in Hog's Heaven.
I can't access my Netflix. I've watched the clips. I didn't see the video package, but I heard Jennifer Aniston and Bradley Cooper introduce her, and I heard her speak. And she was incredible and grateful for Barbara. There was a political message in there.
My favorite part of it is that gays went back and deconstructed her outfit and realized that the jacket she was wearing, she wore in the main event. That the hat was from Donna Karan, 1989. That the dress was from an award show in the 70s that she attended. That she basically just went into her closet and threw together an amalgamation of things that she already had, which I love. I want to say that I want to be a crank for 2 seconds because there are a couple things that bothered me about the SAG Awards. They did a really good in memoriam section. The in memoriam was really beautifully done this year, and it included a wide spectrum of people that don't always get noticed on these award shows. And a lot of soap people were mentioned, but they didn't mention Jacqueline Zeman Andrea Evans or Sonia Eddy, which is weird because they did Billy Miller and a couple other of the male soap stars. I thought it was very odd. I'm wondering if maybe the Emmys will do something nicer, or I thought it was sort of sad. The other weird thing was Robert Downey Jr. giving a shout out to Mel Gibson for helping him in his career. And people were very upset about that, which if he helped him in his career, he helped him in his career and he was thanking him. So I don't know, but it is sort of sometimes when these people get canceled, it's hard to give them their
but everybody has different relationships with all kinds of different people at different points in their life.
It's
and
true.
The other two things that were just highlights for me was the reunion of The Devil Wears Prada with
yes.
With Anne Hathaway and
Anne Hathaway. Was it Anne that was wearing cerulean blue?
Yes, she was.
Yes.
What? Tell me what it was. I missed it.
Meryl Streep comes out and she goes, we're not the parts we play. Oh, I've forgotten my glasses and my card. And out come, why can't I think of the actress's name? Anne Hathaway and
Emily Blunt
come out, who played her assistants, and they repeated her lines. It was, to her.
And there's the very famous scene in Devil Wears Prada where she breaks down how the color blue makes it through bubble. And she says, you think it's just blue. It's not. It's cerulean blue. And so Anne Hathaway was wearing a cerulean blue gown.
It was very funny. You should watch that. And the last, shooting our own horn for a minute, but RuPaul's Drag Race won a very prestigious award at the PGA Awards for Best Competitive Series. And Randy Barbado, our other co-founder, accepted the award, gave a really beautiful speech, and ended by asking for 3 little favors. 1, vote. 2, if you can, hire a drag queen. And 3, tip your local drag queens. And I thought that was awesome. So, and it was fun to see, and a lot of the producers were there. It was beautiful.
But I do want to say that both the Spirit Awards, I watched the Spirit Awards and the SAG Awards, and they were both done really, really well. Just overall, they moved along. They were funny. They had great people, and for once, the banter, which sometimes can be so strange, it was like really fresh and really funny, and everybody was really committed. And I was it gave me hope for the upcoming Oscars.
Oscars, the official climax of awards season, and the end of it for 2 weeks before it all cranks up again.
Yes. And one little thing that's leaked is I think they're bringing back where each category is going to have 5 or 6 previous winners.
I love that, which they haven't done in 15 years.
Yes, which was really cool when they did it. It's like, I don't know, like a video game or something. It's like Mortal Kombat, the Oscars.
That's the Oscars coming on March 10th. All right, moving on. Number 9.
I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to this. Wendy's fast food restaurants announced that they were going to start doing dynamic pricing, which means that they are following the Uber price surging motif, where during peak hours, lunch, breakfast, dinner, prices will shoot up accordingly and then go down during the off hours, which is very different than AMC, which does discount times for off hours, or like early bird specials for during off hours. This is not giving discounts. This is increasing the price, which, imagine you are standing in line for 20 minutes and you get to the register and all of a sudden the price of your Baconator goes up by $3. Okay. Or you go to Wendy's and you see a line at the drive-through and you realize, well, just go to Burger King because they've just raised the prices because more people are there.
So this doesn't sound like a good idea.
No, it's a terrible idea. And first of all, it's just lining the pockets of the corporate bigwigs. It's a corporate bigwig who makes $80 million a year deciding to do this, and it the people who need fast food are people who don't have time. Or, usually it's poor families. You're hurting your customer is what you're doing. And what is to stop, if the news said that all the other fast food companies were watching this very closely, and very soon you'll see McDonald's doing it, Burger King doing it, you'll see, Chipotle doing it. And what's to stop restaurants from doing it? What's to stop supermarkets from doing it? What's to stop us from becoming a price surging country where everything is just based on price gouging, price surging?
But it'll be one more reason to become a creature of the night, to do everything at 3 a.m. That's my my input.
But imagine you go to the Macy's or Bloomingdale's or something, and they shoot the price up because it's lunch hour.
Did you hear there's going to be no more Macy's, James?
Yes, but yeah. That's why I changed it to Bloomingdale's. But basically, the idea that we are entering into a price gouging era is just it's a little disturbing. And I see Fenton just with a confused look on his face, like he doesn't understand why this is a bad thing.
No, I where I was going with it is, once everybody's doing it, then it will become just gouge all the time. I mean, because they just raise prices. But also, I don't know about Wendy's. Like, I've never really seen a long line at Wendy's, so
Well, Wendy's is the most expensive of the fast food restaurants.
I did not.
And it is, if you are a fast food connoisseur, Wendy's is up there as one of the best.
It's trying to be the Zara of fast clothes. Zara is in fast clothes. What? Wendy's.
Yes, it is the Zara of fast food restaurants.
Prove me wrong, but I agree with you. It sounds like a horrible idea. It sounds like it's going to fail miserably.
Well, people are furious about it.
It's the worst PR. Even if it doesn't make a big difference, it just sounds awful. And McDonald's recently, the big guy came out and said, because they've been raising their prices just in general, and they said that we have to go back to like the dollar menu. We have to make sure that we are offering both levels, saying.
Well, because you basically, like a KFC, meal, which used to be $12 is now $34. Like basically the prices are climbing up on everything. And it's not the government, it's not the Democrats that are doing that. It's the CEOs of these people who are getting greedy.
You know what they need? They need a French fry sort of sex toy bucket, like the popcorn bucket for you. That's what these places need.
Everybody needs sex toy. Yes.
Your food wrapping.
In your Happy Meals, you get a sex toy.
There you go. Exactly.
Happy ending meals.
A happy ending meal. All right. Number 8. I'm so excited to give my little review of Ru's book, The House of Hidden Meanings, which comes out March 5th. You can pre-order it now. I predict here it's going to make it onto the New York Times bestseller list, no question. I think it already is a bestseller. So and I think Ru's going to be out on book tours and on the radio and on TV and doing all that malarkey. But I read it, I devoured it. It's not Ru's first memoir, there was Letting Go Hang Out and Guru, but I think it's his most sort of intimate. And I was certainly really struck and moved by sort of how thoughtful it was. It like, when you think of things in life and they're in the back of your mind and you never really either bother to or quite have the ability to like put it in the foreground and clarify it and put it down on paper. That's what I just reading this book, every page, it was like, oh my God, yes. Or, I hadn't thought of that, or just so beautifully put. Yeah.
Can I borrow it from you?
Yes,
I'm very excited to read it. I hear nothing but amazing things about it. And God bless Ru for delving into her psyche.
It's interesting also because it's as memoirs go, let's call it a pre-fame-moir. It stops with Drag Race, and even it doesn't really talk a lot about Supermodel. It's very much a sort of personal interior landscape, and there is something in it that I really do want to show, which is just so moving and something I think I will remember for the rest of my life, which is Ru talks about when he was 5, his sisters sitting him down for a picnic. They sat on a blanket and ate cookies, and He describes feeling under his thumb the lattice work of the fork print pressed into the top of the cookie. So it is a photographically realistic memory in the way that I think a few times in life, something happens to you and it's just there forever, right? And with crystal clarity.
Yeah.
And in the course of this picnic, his sister tells him, it's called a picnic. And then Ru says this, he says, by naming it, she was making the moment something more than it was. We weren't just eating cookies on a blanket. The ceremony of it, the theater of it, that is what anointed this as something extraordinary. The creation of a kind of magic. Reality was suspended. The rules were different. Eating cookies on a blanket was a regular thing to do, but a picnic, now that was something special. Magic I saw for the first time was a choice, and it must be created. To me, I'm like, oh my gosh, the truth of that, and that's what all creativity is. And it's certainly what television is.
And we're all born naked and the rest is drag, another great Ruism.
Yes.
And we all sit on blankets eating cookies, but it isn't always a picnic.
Right.
Fenton, you've done him longer than I have. And James, you have, it's like having worked with him for many years. He is so sensitive. And, the fact that he can recall things, this speaks to, I think, his sensitivity. And I think but as queer kids, sometimes we hold on to these little things and moments that separated us, and that, and I for the first time, I think Ru's going out on this book tour, and I think he's excited to do it, but I think he's written a very revealing book. So he's, it's like he's really going out there, without the wig, without the makeup, and just with his heart in his sleeve. And I think people are going to really enjoy that.
Yeah, he also talks about the American music show, the public access show he went on in Atlanta. And you sort of realize that he understood what TV is. And obviously that show wasn't a network show. It was a cable public access show. But Ru knew that a TV is a TV is a TV. And it is a sort of an amplifier or a sort of fame multiplier. And also, by the way, the best description of an REM song ever put on paper. He says the REM song sounded like a human sob. I can't tell if he's throwing shade or if it's an applause, but personally, REM songs are not my thing. And I do think they sound like human sobs, like stifled human sobs. Anyway, it's a really great book, and it's out March 5th. All right, let's take a break. New episodes of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 16, UK versus the World Season 2 tonight on, of course, WoW Presents Plus, excluding USA, Canada, Australia. Yes, sign up on wowpresentsplus.com. Blake, do you have a question for us?
I do. We all know the song Groove is in the Heart by Delight, right? And you know the sample that goes, I. You know that part?
I do know that sample.
What actress is that?
Oh. All right, we'll have the answer right after the break here on the WoW Report on Radio Andy.
You're listening to World of Wonders WoW Report. Things that make us go wow.
And welcome back to the WoW Report. It's Fenton here with Tom and James and Blake.
And I asked a trivia question. I asked, in the song Groove is in the Heart by Delight, there's that I sample. That's actually a sample of an actress that we all know. Who is it?
Is it Jane Fonda in Barbarella?
No.
It's so good. It sounds like Stacey Q2 of Hearts. That's not really an actress.
It was meant to sound like the I, but it's not that.
You.
Right.
Is it a porn actress?
It's not. Fenton, you got a guess?
No, because it was. I've just locked into the Stacey Q thing because when you went, I need
you.
Right.
Two hearts.
That sample actually is from the Green Acres theme song. Ava Gabor is saying, "I love a,"
I just adore a penthouse view.
Yeah.
in the sort of famous samples thing, in Lady Gaga, Poker Face, ma 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 ma, that sample. You know who that is?
No.
It's from Boney M. Ma Baker.
Oh.
Yes.
Ma 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 ma.
Huge in the UK.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Right. Unknown anywhere else.
I don't even know who Boney Fingers is.
Boney M. Oh my gosh, so many.
They're
hits.
one of the biggest acts in the UK. There was like a top 10 of all time UK show I saw when I was there, and Boney M is all over it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be ding dong.
Rivers of Babylon, Ma Baker.
This means nothing.
List the more titles that James never heard of. Yeah, that'll be good.
All right, we're counting down the top 10 things that made us go, wow. We've reached number 7.
Number 7.
Because I don't have access to real television, I am watching a lot of YouTube. And I like to look at old cars. I used to have a 53 Ford for like 35 years, and I sold it. And now my feed is all old cars. And so I started clicking on to sort of like straight guys driving their, their hepped up like 57 Dodge and talking about it. And then that led me to to my favorite space, which is car advertisements, TV vintage from the 60s mostly. And talk about Mad Men and talk about the twist of a concept. There was loyalty for Chevrolet, right? And the fleet of Chevrolets and what they had to offer, or the Chrysler, or it's 1960, the year of the Oldsmobile. And here are some of my favorites. And I invite you all to go onto YouTube and watch for yourself. But in 1967, I became obsessed with the Dodge. It's the Polara. And it just had these big, juicy back lights and whatever. And they hired this actress, Pamela Austin, who was just bouffant blonde, big boobies. And she so it would start off and she would be like on a railroad track, and all of a sudden the train would come behind her and she's going to die. And then it would freeze frame. And then like a Dodge Coronet would drive by, and eventually the Dodge Coronet would save her. But you stayed with the ad to see how she would be saved by the thing. It was so bizarre. And she'd always be like, join the Dodge Rebellion. Okay, these don't translate well in stories, but they're really fun to watch.
But wait, so it's sort of like Penelope Pit Stop, where there would be cliffhangers and you'd have to wait for the next commercial.
She would say, hey, George the Dodge Revolution. Then she gets stuck on a windmill and she'd be up in the air. And then all of a sudden a stunt woman, but her, would be falling. And then it'd be like, what happens? They talk, the Dodge Polarma for 1967. It's so sleek. It's so nice. And by the end, she boom, landed the car. Join the Dodge Revolution. Crazy.
Yeah.
There is some kind of documentary to be made just about the advertising, not starting with, but like, there's a plethora of dinosaur, because also advertisers advertised shows. They sponsored shows, and they showed the Bewitched, which was sponsored by Chevy. They always had Chevys. What I didn't know is that the Chevy, when you see the beginning of Bewitched, the animation, when they go to the Chevy symbol turns into the moon that is then flown by Elizabeth Montgomery. They took all that stuff off for syndication, but literally a cartoon Darren and Samantha sit on a Chevy emblem. Like, it's just shameless.
It's sort of like when the Flintstones would be smoking Lucky Strikes, and they Fred and Wilma would be saying, the doctors say that this is the commercial. The people were part of the commercials.
Yes, and so sexy girls are one thing. Then there was just like low talkers, like Robert Conrad or William Shatner in 1971, like this original balding hair just starting to recede, and it's the 1971 Plymouth Fury, and it's like a totally new automotive design. And then Plymouth coming through. The best one, James, I sent this to you and you can watch it, but it's like, is Zsa Zsa Gabor. It's like, we're here at the house of an average housewife. And it's like, hello, darling. And you just realize what a fucking genius Zsa Zsa Gabor was. Comedic genius, everything that comes out of her mouth. And she's like, and it was a 1963 Studebaker Lark, which was that really flat, big, was a big tank-looking car with a really disproportionately high roof and windows. And she goes, at first, I thought that was too high. Then I realized when they raised the roof, that I could go in with my hats. And so she keeps going in and out of the car, and she's always in a different outfit. Oh, my hair is up for the evening. And then, and there's a vanity mirror built into the glove box. She goes, I love that idea. And it has flat floors, so my heels won't break. And they said, Miss Gabor, were you paid to say these things? She goes, of course, darling. I got a different colored lock for every day of the week. Oh my God, my Zsa Zsa Gabor is really good.
It's so funny that this is simultaneously the straightest and gayest one you've ever done on the show.
Yes. And the last two I'll just say is the 1969, and I start to remember these. I actually saw them. It was Ford, and it was like 1969. They had a bunch of people in like sort of like racer suits, white and blue, but it was very mod, and it was like super gay dancer guys and girls with poofy hair, and they're all dancing, and it's like, Ford, we give you better ideas. And the O of Ford was a light bulb because it was a better idea. And then last but not least, which brings us to 1977 or 8, and it's Farrah Fawcett for the Cougar.
Oh, wow.
And they would have the cougar sign, and they have the sound effect of a real cougar going, hey. It's like, come to the side of the cat. And she's by the way, and I went off on a Farrah Fawcett thing. She was in so many commercials. She must have been so rich when commercials.
She did the great shampoo commercial with Laverne Penny Marshall. Remember? Yes. She did the pearly drops of the pearl drops.
Yes, there was. This is before she was Farrah Fawcett famous. There's one with her and Tom Selleck with Dubonnet, two of the sexiest people on the earth. Why wouldn't you buy Dubonnet just because they told you to? Anyway, I am obsessed. The last thing I'll say is walking around. I used to do a paper route with my friend Randy Pinard in Newport, New Hampshire, population 6,000 where I grew up. And we had the Main Street route, and we would go down, and there was cars parked there, and we would name every car every year. Like, we were obsessed with cars, and it kind of brought me back.
It's so heterosexual of you. It's very interesting. I've never cared anything about cars, but now I'll have to go down a car hole.
And we'll post a link to those car commercials at worldofwonder.net/wow report. Yeah. James, number 6.
Number 6.
I'm going to take over where Tom usually is and do a rest in peace segment. This is Rest in Peace Flacco, the owl. I don't know if anyone outside of New York City has been following the Flacco drama. Flacco was a Eurasian eagle owl who was raised in captivity at the Central Park Zoo. And for the first 13 years of his life, he was in a box where he could not even spread his wings. And he was next to like the Wolverines or something, which terrified him. And he sort of had a sad little life, basically, is what the story is. And then vandals came one night and put a hole in his box, and he was able to escape. And he became a symbol of freedom, of overcoming your obstacles to the people of New York. And he became an icon, a beloved figure. And when you saw Flacco the owl, it was like good luck would follow you the rest of your day. People loved this owl. He was often seen in Central Park where he roosted, having never known freedom, never known nature, never knowing anything. He chose to stay in Central Park where he taught himself to hunt rats. And that's how he survived, and people would feed him. And he had a favorite tree where people would go and see him frequently. And he also very comically would be in windows, people's windows. They would open up the curtains and he would just be sort of staring at them. And he was very famous for going on balconies, and people would always take pictures of Flacco wherever. Well, sadly, this last week, he flew into a window and died. I mean, it's very sad. It's he collided with a building on the Upper West Side, prompting an outcry from New Yorkers who want the city to implement bird-safe windows, because so often it's a big problem in New York where the birds become disoriented by the reflection and the shining on windows and everything. So they're trying to push new legislation to help the birds. There was a memorial service for Flacco, and people are saying, that 1 year of freedom was better than another 10 years in captivity, or, that this bird learned to be a bird, learned to be himself. But then there are other people. Joyce Carol Oates went on and said, no, he was probably terrified that whole year. That it's sort of like that thing where, sometimes lions don't want to come out of their cages when they're, reintroduced into the nature, because that's all they've ever known. And that maybe he was disoriented and terrified the whole time. But you want to believe that Flacco was living his best life and being his best owl self for that year.
This is the bleakest story. Whichever way you look at it,
it is. Yeah, but he was such a symbol of of possibility of changing your life, of finding happiness, no matter what age you are. So I guess you can look at it that.
It makes me want to sing "Want to Find My Corner of the Sky" from Pippin, but lucky for you, we don't have time.
Well, rest in perfection, Flacco the Owl. All right, number 5.
Number 5.
Reading another book. It's called "It's Not You." And the subtitle is "Identifying and Healing from Narcissistic People" by Ramani Dervasula. Now, here's the thing.
Hold on a second. James, you listening?
He's
not listening. James just laughed for anyone listening.
I think when Trump got elected, there was a sudden surge in articles about narcissism. And I guess I sort of heard about this book and decided to get it. And it wasn't published here in the States. So it took a while. It literally just arrived on my Kindle a few days ago. And I started reading it. And it's sort of like, the 4 pillars of narcissism: the lack of empathy, grandiosity, sense of entitlement, need for admiration and validation from other people. I'm like, okay, right. And then narcissists practice on abusing people with gaslighting and dismissiveness and rage and threats and revenge and love bombing and then ghosting and betrayal. As I'm reading this, I'm beginning to think, is this book speaking to me, or am I too in the narcissist space? And I started looking online, and there's a huge genre of narcissist books. It's almost like a whole genre of sort of narcy noir. Those books for if your parents are narcissists, if your father's a narcissist, if your mother was a narcissist, if you're working with a narcissist in the work, these are all separate books. If you're married to a narcissist, if the killer is a narcissist, so you're just beginning to, and then there's vulnerable narcissists and dominant narcissists and malignant narcissists, and there's bully controller narcissists and show-off narcissists and addictive self-soothing narcissists and workaholic narcissists and superhero. I was beginning to think, well, hang on a second,
is everybody a narcissist?
Is everybody and everything a narcissist? What
do you have an Instagram account?
Narcissist.
A little bit.
I do think that the rise in more narcissistic tendencies and personalities it's been on the rise since Trump. I do think that he has given people a doorway to be their worst narcissistic selves.
I also
think social media
as
well. Social media has fed into that as well.
Right, because I'm always hate scrolling and saying, "Oh, look at you showing off your body," or "Look at you showing off this." I'm showing off whatever my work accomplishment. We're all kind of putting our best foot forward, which is kind of narcissistic. And I also think where we can have some tolerance for each other. Abraham Lincoln once said, "There's so much good in the worst of us and so much bad in the best of us that it ill behooves any of us to find fault with the rest of us." And I think we all can have narcissistic tendencies. Because I know someone close to me who I believe is very narcissistic, but I also think that person, I won't gender them, has a kind heart. But it's just
you're talking about Theron.
Theron and Blake.
And James and me.
No. But so I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think we're all a little bit of everything.
Well, I wonder, in the same way that every age seems to have its malady, right? So, I think in the 70s it was schizophrenia was the thing, and I guess lately in the modern era it's been trauma has been the sort of everybody's surviving trauma, and I wonder if the narcissist thing is a bit overused, if it's ended up being a brush to paint everything,
or it could just be a trend that in the next generation will have no use for it and we'll have another trend. But I'm also thinking of the great phrase, every generation gets the celebrities that it deserves.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think the celebrities that we have now that we deserve are ourselves. And that we've all made ourselves into the celebrities and we are what we deserve for it.
I think that's very profound. I mean, I was thinking about the rise of the Nazi party, if there's a narcissism epidemic and the rise of a Nazi party. And then I was thinking about, well, Nazi sounds a bit like Nazis, and how are Nazis and narcissists different? And no, but they're different in that.
Well, the
The
Venn
Nazi
diagram
thing was all about subjugating the self, right? Everybody being a cog in a machine. And the narcissism thing is it's all about the self. And that actually, instead of subjugating the self, it's a sort of orgy of the self. And it does seem to fit with this situation we seem to find ourselves in, where it feels like the fabric of society is being eroded because everybody's just sort of out for themselves. Does that make any kind of sense?
It does. But in 5th century BC, Pericles and the idea of the self and civilization, it is the human condition. I read one book in college.
Well, I'm about halfway through this book. About the one piece of advice, if you are in a situation, whether it's at work or in a relationship or a parent who's a narcissist, the one piece of advice I think is kind of funny is the way of dealing with it is you can never change them. Apparently that's not going to work. So what you should do is, it's called the gray rock strategy, which means to be as dull as possible. Make yourself as dull as possible. And that's instead of like garlic for vampires or a crucifix, the cure for scaring off the narcissist in your life is just to make yourself dull, like a gray rock.
So that they can't get anything off. They can't.
Yes. You're just a lump of poo, basically. It's all.
So basically be Mike Pence.
There you go. Right. Yes, exactly. All right. That's available on Amazon. Binge Queens is back for RuPaul's Drag Race UK versus the World with Taste, Lala Ree, and Jerry Paris, Van Michaels, and Jessica Wilde, of course. And Hey Queen, streaming exclusively on Wow Presents Plus. Johnny McGovern sits down with the eliminated queen from each week of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 16 for a tell-all interview.
It's sickening. I have a question. What 70s pop duo owned 2 apartment buildings named after their hits in Downey, California?
We'll have the answer for you right here on the Wow Report after the break.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
And welcome back to Wow Report. It's Fenton here with Blake and James and Tom. Blake, you had a question for us.
I did. What 70s pop duo owned 2 apartment buildings across the street from each other, named after their hits in Downey, California, which is right outside of Los Angeles?
Well, I know you're gonna say Captain and Tennille.
No, I wanted to, but the Downey thing is the clue.
I'm gonna say, okay. What about Hall and Oates?
That's what I was going to say. Is it the Eagles? But they weren't a pop duo, so that's no good.
The Carpenters.
Oh.
From Downey, California.
The buildings were named Only Just Begun and Close to You, and they still have that on the sides of them, even though the Carpenters sadly don't own them anymore.
Well, yeah.
Well, they're apartment buildings, are they?
They are apartment buildings.
Right. All right, we're counting down the top 10 things that made us go, wow. We've reached number 4.
Number 4.
This is not my field of expertise, but a story brought me a smile and some hope, and I thought that was worth talking about. Did you guys hear about the $1 billion donation that will provide free tuition at a Bronx medical school? Did you hear about that?
Love this. Yes.
Yeah.
So the woman's name, I have to pull it up here, she's a 91-year-old Ruth, I believe it's Gottsman. And she was a longtime professor at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. Her husband was a financial whiz, and he passed away. And I guess much to her surprise, it was a lot of money, enough that she could give $1 billion. David Gottsman was his name. And he had early investments in Berkshire Hathaway and all that. And so she had worked, as a professor, and it's in a very underserved community, where there's very bad statistics about medical care. And so by giving this $1 billion, people will be able to go tuition free. Doctors will be able to, students will be able to become doctors without being burdened with the hundreds of thousands of medical debt. And how beautiful is that? Beautiful.
And Yeah, it's not just this class; it's in perpetuity for
I'm
until the
assuming they
money
create a
runs out,
trust that just keeps making money and money and money and money, but
and
instead of
hopefully
lining
it goes
somebody's
for the
pockets,
yeah.
or building, some vanity building, she's actually paying for people's tuition, which I think is incredible.
I do love those stories. I remember when Vincent Astor died, and he left the $100 million to Brooke Astor, and he said, "Your only job is to give this money away before you die." And so
Yeah.
she spent the rest of her life just, feeding the public libraries and
Yeah.
helping the underprivileged in New York City. And
And
I just
I
love those
guess that
stories.
still goes on. Jeff Bezos's first wife obviously was doing things, but there's some other thing I saw online. I don't know how accurate it is, but it's like Jeff Bezos's wealth before COVID, after COVID. Before COVID was like, and I'm making up numbers, $45 billion. And now it's $245 billion. And you just see what like $1 billion can do. Like spend that money, put it back into the world.
Well, I saw something online saying, what if Elon Musk, instead of spending 44 billion on Twitter, had
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Are we still in the narcissist story, Fenton? Are we still in the narcissist story? Anyway, that's a quick one, but I just wanted to salute her. And again, it just brought me joy. And there was actually the president of the college. There's a little clip online of them announcing it to the student, and just the reaction. It was like the Oprah Carr thing times 1 billion, if you will.
Right. There you go. Number 3, James.
Number 3.
I am doing American Comics, a history, which is an absolutely fascinating look at the history of comic books and comic serials and newspapers, starting with the Civil War, when it was mostly propaganda to try and get people on both sides, and then through like Winsor McKay and Little Nemo and the Katzenjammer Kids in the early 1900s, Dick Tracy, Little Orphan Annie, The Shadow, all of that stuff in the newspapers in the 20s and 30s, going into DC, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman in the 40s. And then the 60s, of course, when Marvel revolutionized the comic book industry by putting everything into political and socio-political and cultural, terms. Really fascinating stuff. 2 factoids that leapt out at me. Number 1, Charles Schulz hated the Peanuts. He hated the name Peanuts, and he wanted it to be Little Folks or something like that. But a newspaper bigwig overrode him and renamed it Peanuts. And he renamed it Peanuts because he mistakenly thought that was the hip slang that all the kids were using. To be about kids, because Howdy Doody had the peanut gallery. So he thought peanuts were kids, and he thought that's what everyone was saying. All the hip people were saying, calling kids peanuts. And so, and Charles Schulz hated that until the day he died.
Can we start calling each other peanuts?
Yes.
Hey, peanuts.
Hey, peanuts. Hey, peanuts. And the other one was that there's a whole chapter on Mad Magazine talking about how in the 50s that basically Mad Magazine and Playboy Magazine were the 2 driving cultural forces of the time, and they reshaped the culture that we live in even to this day. And how, without Mad Magazine, there wouldn't be, Laugh-In or Saturday Night Live or any sort of skewering of celebrity, skewering of politics. It was the first one to really take on the establishment in a way that led to the 60s and people rebelling against establishment and things like that. It was the college students that were reading it. And Playboy, too, broke down so many barriers of sexuality leading to the sexual revolution, things like that. So they're the 2 most important factors of the 1950s. And it gives a really good argument for that. I just sort of summed it up very quickly. But Alfred E. Newman, the idiot mascot on the cover of every Mad magazine, was based on young Prince Charles. And that the face with the big ears and the idiot expression on his face. I
always hated that. That image is so grotesque.
Yeah. And apparently Prince Charles was pissed off. The Queen was pissed off that they tried to bring legal action against Mad. And of course, there was nothing they could do about it because it's covered by satire.
But he's blonde, isn't he?
He's redhead, and he's got But apparently, if you look at it, you can. There were side-by-side pictures of young Prince Charles and Alfred E. Newman. I thought that was absolutely hysterical.
May I put a footnote on your story?
Yes.
Peanuts did car ads for the 1962 Ford Falcon. You can watch those online as well. Thank you.
And Lucy is a narcissist. So it all sort of...
Does it also tell the story of the comic code? Because I think that's quite an interesting...
Yes. Yeah. Well, interestingly, so much of early DC, they entered into it was at the World War II and all of that. And, there was fighting Nazis and all that stuff. But essentially, a lot of it, the creator of Wonder Woman was a leather fetishist. And so Wonder Woman is always ripping the clothes off of women. She's always in leather. She's always being tied up. Every issue, she's being bound in some intricate way. There's a lot of sexuality and things. And people were saying that Batman and Robin were gay, all that stuff. And it led to the comic code in the 1950s, which destroyed the comic industry. Everybody went away for 5 or 6 years. And the only ones that survived were, it was the horror comics too, the EC comics that really, when everybody was, bloody heads and vampires and things like that, that was, the youth of America were being, So that all happened. And it wasn't until the end of the 50s when they started coming back. And that's when Marvel.
Oh, right. Because I definitely had sexual feelings for Spider-Man, I have to say. At
a
young age. It was like, all that web.
Well, Spider-Man is sexual. The web coming out is definitely nocturnal emissions.
There you go.
And uncontrolled. You're uncontrolled. It comes out of you. Blah blah blah.
And the spandex fetish.
Yeah,
you were famously overstimulated by Batman in the 60s.
Yes. I mean, the whole thing is like story of my life. I am the
Spider-Man was the first superhero that was relatable to teenage boys in a way that no other superhero was. He was attainable. He was he was always, but beyond that, he was, conflicted. He was being, he had bullies. He wasn't, his parents had problems at school, all that stuff. He was a teenage boy with the teenage boy problems.
Well, that's American comics, I guess.
Oh, by Jeffrey Dauber.
Got it. Okay, fabulous. Number two. I have a new obsession. It's not Soviet bus stops. I've moved on from Soviet bus stops. It is Japanese woodblock prints from literally the 1930s to the 1950s. This specific period where there were like a handful of artists, Hasui, Koetsu, Yoshida, Shote, and they created these prints that are sort of, I guess, about 11 by 17. And there's something about them. I mean, we'll put some examples on the WOW report. They're very flat. They're sort of illustrative and very peaceful. And in some ways, and this sounds like a negative, I don't mean it at all. In some ways, they're formulaic. There'll be landscapes of sacred sites like Mount Fuji or temples or those torii gates, the two sticks and the thing on the top. And they will also be often in the rain or at night or in snow. So they always have this sort of incredible mood. And if it's a night one, for example, there'll be in one corner of the print a window, with a yellowish glow coming from it. There's something so, whether it's sort of calming or a
Zen.
Yes, I get
your moment of Zen. But explain to me what a wood cutting.
It's a wood block, so it's like, I guess it's like an engraving.
So you carve out the image on the wood, and then you make you press it onto the paper on top.
And the weird thing is, in some respects, they're very not simple, but what is the word? I mean, because they're not ornate and they are picturesque. But the colors, always like sunsets or dawn, the colors are so enchanting. I've become completely obsessed. And so my Instagram feed is now filled with Japanese wood.
That sounds pleasant, actually.
Is this something that you can start to collect? Are the prices prohibitive?
No, they're not prohibitive. I mean, they're not like sort of contemporary art prices, like sort of Warhols. They're like, the prints are like a few hundred to a few thousand.
Yeah.
And because it was sort of almost a style, almost like a sonnet, a tradition, they often are the same size, sort of basically like an 11 by 17 size, and also similarity of subjects, also treated in the same way. And I was thinking about this and thinking, I wonder if there's something about it that's like a precursor of pop art, because one of the things about pop art is it's sort of very flat. It's very graphic. It's not necessarily highly realistic. It's sort of.
I'm glad you've made that connection, because I've been dying to say this is the perfect extension of your obsession with pop art and Warhol and all that.
It seems to me, Fenton, that when we were in Tokyo for Party Monster, remember how people were always giving us gifts? And wherever you go, people are handing you things. And I remember somebody giving us paintings that seemed like watercolors of cherry trees and the ocean waves and things. I still have them somewhere, and I'm wondering if these are woodcuts. That
it sounds like they could be woodblock prints.
Prints.
The most famous one that everybody here will know is the picture of the wave. By Hokusai. That was like from like sort of 50 years earlier, but it's one of the world's most famous images. It's of that sort of a giant wave, Japanese wave. And but there's other sort of traditions, the same tradition, but just emerged about like in the 30s to the 50s, I guess before sort of photography became ascendant. And the other weird thing about them is, Tom, is that like pop art, they were never considered art because they were never numbered. They were never like limited editions. They were just, you do a woodblock print and you just print it out forever. But now, of course, they are becoming quite rare because, some of them are like 100 or so years old. But they were never, in that time, they were never considered art. They were considered like sort of touristy things.
So much of art was not considered art when when you think of photography was not considered art until the 70s, 60s, 70s. Silver, it was Sam Wagstaff who made American silver, teacups or teapots and things like that. It was considered, valuable. So much of, like Impressionism and stuff like that was not, the Pollocks and all of that stuff. Neo-Expressionism was not considered art at the time. You have to have a 50-year window for someone to appreciate what it is that you've done.
Within a year, I see a collab between Crocs and Japanese wood print art. Here,
well, I see a drag race challenge where it's probably more likely.
Category is Japanese woodblock prints.
Runway.
All right, let's take a quick break. House of Love flavors. Remember, there's 3 new flavors available. Delicious vodka soda citrus, only 100 calories, 4% strength. Passion fruit margarita, also just 100 calories. And then for the sober amongst us, myself excluded, the totally tropical mocktail. And of course, then there's always the tangerine margarita. Oh my God. Just thinking about it, I feel drunk. You take it's like 13%, gorgeous. All available at houseoflovecocktails.com. One more break. When we come back, the number one thing this week that, well, I don't know if I want to say wow with this, right?
It made us feel something is what it did.
Yes, right. We'll have that right after the break here on the Wow Report.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. We've been counting down, Tom and James and Blake and myself. We've been counting down the top 10 things of the week that made us go wow. This is a difficult number one.
Number one.
It is. I don't know if Tom, you have been able to watch it. You probably haven't been able to watch it from start to finish. I don't know if you're going to want to do it. It's Where is Wendy Williams on Lifetime, which is a 2-day, over 2 days, there was 4 episodes, and it follows Wendy Williams' struggle with dementia, aphasia, alcoholism, Graves' disease, everything that she's dealing with, and the effects that it has on her and her family and the people around her, and how she is now into a conservatorship, and they don't know where she is, the family, and they hear from her. But Wendy is a co-producer of this, and she gave the okay for it before things started getting really bad. It's sort of what I how I understand it. So she wanted people to know what she was going through, but I don't think that she was probably in her right mind as they started filming. And if she was, she might have put the kibosh on it, or her family should have put the kibosh on it, because it is painful to watch. It is so upsetting. It is so tragic and sad to see this woman who, love her or not, she was a vital force in the entertainment industry, and to see what she is going through now, and how the alcoholism is affecting the aphasia, and she just refused it, and how she's acting out in public, and some people are enabling her, it seems, and you don't know who the good guys are in this, who are the bad actors, who are trying to enable her, who are taking advantage of her, who really want to help her. And it brings to mind Britney is what it does, where you had the people around her were the taking advantage of her, and the conservatorship, for better or for worse, took her out of that situation. And or were the conservatorships? Was the conservatorship the bad thing for Britney? Like, who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? And poor Wendy Williams just sort of seems to be caught in the middle of Fenton. What did you?
The producers and executives at Lifetime, which is part of A&E, gave an interview saying if we had known that Wendy had dementia going into it, no one would have rolled a camera. And they also say they'd never air something that didn't have Wendy's best interest at heart, to which I have to say, lies.
Yes.
I know A&E, we've worked with them. It's always been a bit of a bumpy ride, and I just don't believe that for a second. As someone who has two siblings with dementia, something is wrong way before anyone else does. And for them to pretend that they didn't know is just consummate bullshit. And that's what makes me angry. I just find the whole thing shady and suspicious, and all the rationalization that they're trying to bring to it, and the self-justification. I personally having none of it. Like Tom, take it away. It's like, stop me saying something.
It makes me sick to my stomach. It's such a complicated thing. There are, as James pointed out, who are the heroes? It's just, life is really complicated sometimes. And I wish her and her family the best, which sounds really trite, but I do. And I don't disagree with your moral kind of evaluation of the situation, but I don't have words. It's just.
But I think we all join in wishing Wendy the best care possible, and
peace to her family for,
look, sorry to end on this slightly down note, but thanks for tuning into the Wow Report on Radio Andy, Sirius XM. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, James. Thank you, Blake. Same time, same place next week. Until then, go out and do something that makes the world go
wow.